Good morning, good day, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Managing Metadata for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. My name is John Horodyski. We are having a webinar today for this. As a matter of procedure, we want to go through a few slides just to introduce the panelists and how we are going to be proceeding. Just want to make sure this works. There we go. The agenda for today is we're going to do introductions of all the panelists. We'll then do an overview and purpose of the webinar today. We will then talk a little bit about language and meaning, metadata, diversity, equity, inclusion. We will then go into a panel discussion and then a concluding of a what's next, and then a rigorous Q&A from everyone attending today. So please make sure to put all your comments in that section and we will respond to those. We're hoping to have a live translator join us for this event. So we're just working that out in the background. In the event this individual is not able to show up, we do have transcription services going behind the scenes. What we did notice last time was that the word DAM, digital asset management, was transcribed as a different way. So during our presentation, if we say the words DAM, we are referring to digital asset management. And then before we get going with the introductions, this is our second time doing this webinar. Why our second? Because the first one was so well received and we had so many people requesting to see this again. We are doing it. We did learn from our first webinar, which is why we are having a live translator come in and be able to do the transcription services. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. And for those of you who are returning, welcome back. We do have new content to share with you all. And with that, we are going to start the introductions. My name is John Horodyski, Executive Director for Insights and Analytics at Salt Flats. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a cisgender white male. I'm wearing a black shirt with a blue striped jacket, and my background is primarily a lot of bookshelves. I've been doing digital asset management and all metadata taxonomy for over 20 years now. Started my career at Electronic Arts doing their work, and then been in the consulting business ever since. I also, as a adjunct faculty at San Jose State University, where I've been teaching a graduate course in digital asset management for over 15 years now. I'm a board member of the Journal of Digital Media Management, a regular contributor to CMS Wire, had a book out a few years ago on DAM, and my new book on metadata matters was published just a few weeks ago. And over to Reem.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Reem El Asaleh. My pronouns is she, her. I'm a Middle Eastern, mid-tone skin woman. I'm wearing a light yellow blouse, and I'm wearing a dark blue scarf. My background is a fuzzy hole. I'm an associate professor at the School of Graphics Communication Management at the Creative School at what we previously known Ryerson University. And yesterday was announced that we now become the Toronto Metropolitan University. I am a member of the Ryerson Graduate Study in the Master of Digital Media program and a PhD in Media and Design Innovation program at the Creative School. I have a multidisciplinary knowledge in computer science and graphics communication. I have been teaching the digital asset management course at my school for more than 10 years. I'm a member of a committee called the Dimension Pilot Program, who's looking at the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in research ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Carol.
Hello. Hi, my name is Carol Thomas-Knipes. I go by the pronouns she, her, hers. I'm a cisgendered Black female. I am wearing a black, blue, and white patterned shirt. And my background is mostly white, though there is some background of our office. I am coming into this webinar as I'm the Vice President of DAM Program Management and an administrator at Citi for their global marketing team. I've been here probably now about 8 months, relatively new. I came to DAM through creative marketing. So I was a designer, always really good with technology, moved into what's now called pre-media space at an agency, rolled out a DAM at that agency, moved on from that to being able to roll out other DAM systems for clients, and then working for a technology company that had a DAM integrated with several other tools. And so I worked with several large retailers rolling out DAM systems for them. So I have about 20 years experience doing that. I also like speaking in panels. I've spoken at Henry Stewart and several other digital asset management and metadata panels and webinars and things. So, and also I'm one of the co-leads at the moment of the NYC DAM meetup group. So yeah, I'm excited to join in. Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret.
Hi, everyone. I'm Margret Campbell. I'm the manager of search editing at Getty Images. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a cisgender white woman with black hair, and I'm wearing a black blouse, and I'm sitting in front of a solid light gray background. My background with Getty Images, I started in their sales and research department, and then I've been in charge of the search editing team, creating the controlled vocabulary that becomes our searchable metadata for over 10 years now. I'm very happy to be part of this panel discussing all things tagging and keywording under a DEI lens. I hope you all enjoy this and find it helpful. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists. Before we get going, as a reminder, please, if you have any questions for all of us as we go forward, please put that into the Q&A section. We do have a moderator for this event who will be watching those. And when it's time, those questions will be presented back to us and we will be able to have a response and a dialogue with you. All right. We always want to start with a good grounding and definitions to know what we're doing here. So why are we doing this webinar? It is imperative to understand and to be mindful of the people, the process, and the technologies that might influence all the things you are doing in your business, professional, and practical lives. Metadata matters, and we all believe the reason for one of the arguments to have this sort of a webinar presentation is because we know that metadata gives structure and meaning to the data associated with all that we do in our business and our personal transactions. It tells us where your content came from, where it's going, and how it can be used. So, as we know, and for those of you maybe new to the conversation, what we're trying to elicit today is that metadata is all about meaning, and it must change with societal norms in a respectful and an inclusive manner. So what is metadata? Again, we always do like to have definitions. Quite simply, it's data about data. It refers to the descriptive, structural, and administrative elements that define content. But in fact, metadata is so much more than that. It matters because it defines us at any given point in time with the best information available for us for content clarity. And that's the lens upon which we were beginning to have this conversation today and how it influences diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, if data is the language upon which our modern society is being built, then metadata is going to be that grammar, the construction of its meaning as we go along. As we already influence that it does give us structure and meaning to the data and the things and the words and the processes that we use. But we also know that metadata is all about access to the information, the images, the videos, the content that we are seeking. And throughout our content journey, metadata finds not only ourselves, but the content that we are looking for. And if we believe that metadata is influence in this, we know that our business needs and our user needs and language changes over time. And as that changes, so too does our metadata. So it needs to adapt and stay relevant to the content at hand. So if we look at language and meaning as a part of the lens in which we are looking at metadata, we know that language is always in a state of change. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, over 1,000 neologisms, which are new words or phrases, they're added to the English language on an annual basis. This is coming from either new words being invented, like adorkable or adulting or zhuzh, but also new meanings for existing words like drone. So when one thinks about metadata, the belief and the argument is that it's really never done because language is always in a state of change. So therefore, metadata is a part of that. So when someone says, how is that metadata project going? Is it done yet? It's not really ever going to be done. It's always in a state of change due to societal changes, new words being changed or added to our lexicon. So metadata is always going to be in that state of change. So some fun examples of how it is being a part of that change. Right now I'm looking at this screen and it is a cookie. I, being in North America, look at that and say a cookie. However, someone in the UK would say, maybe that is a biscuit. In France, it would be a biscuit. In Australia, a bicky. In Japan, a cookie. All the same thing in terms of the content of which we see, but the way in which we refer to it and describe it might be different based upon who we are and where we are in the world. Similarly, chips and crisps, delicious snack at any time of the day. Some of us may say chips, some of us may say crisps. It does matter. Metadata does matter for this example for who we are and how we're trying to describe it, but for also the individual looking to seek and find that information. It is important that we're able to identify the content and then receive that content, and metadata plays a role in that. Now, let's talk about something more specific in terms of the language and the meaning of what it is in terms of metadata. So if we accept that language is alive and is something that is part of the lexicon and it's always growing and evolving and changing, some things need to change as a matter of respect. And other things change as a matter of socio-political, cultural changes in the world and their meaning. So take, for example, the common phrase, "and the winner is." Familiar to many award shows and events, it begs the question of who or what is a winner after all. So after the 1988 Academy Awards show, the phrase was changed to, "and the Oscar goes to." This was changed due to the producer Alan Carr's decision to make it less competitive. So the argument be made that everyone is indeed a winner as they are all nominated for a particular category, but only one recipient may receive the actual Oscar. So the new phrase is indeed more accurate in terms of its cause and effect. Similarly, during the AIDS epidemic in the 1990s, the term VD, which stood for venereal disease, became STD, which stands for sexually transmitted disease, to avoid the connotation of something being dirty. Furthermore, it was then changed around 2013 to become STI, or sexually transmitted infection, to indicate a shift away from the stigma associated with the word disease. These examples show that words do indeed have meaning and change with societal norms. The last example we wanted to share is the term cisgender, which was first seen in academia in the 1990s, but did not gain momentum in 2007 when transgender theorist Julia Serrano used it in her book, Whipping Girl, and it then caught on in the popular medium and was eventually added to the Oxford Dictionary in 2015. So metadata does matter and its influence with language. So to begin the discussion and to sort of frame our webinar panel today, we did want to define diversity, equity, inclusion. Now, some of us have it also written as equity, diversity, inclusion. Nonetheless, whatever you are using in your institution, your business, this is how we are defining these things. So to further this conversation and how important and impactful metadata is in DEI, I wanted to introduce a set of definitions. So the first one being diversity. It's defined as differences in race, color, place of origin, religion, immigrant and newcomer status, ethnic origin, ability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression and age. Equity is defined as the removal of systemic barriers and biases from enabling all individuals to have equal opportunity to access and benefit from the program. Lastly, inclusion is defined as the practice of ensuring that all individuals are valued and respected for their contributions and equally supported. And the impacts of how DEI is described using metadata is really important to ensure that all the terms used to describe your really important content and how assets are being organized to show those relationships with intention and care for the downstream impacts. Because we all know, and we are working towards those positive impacts, we need to also be mindful of potential negative impacts. So with that, we're now going to move into the panel discussion section of the webinar. So all the panelists came together and we reviewed topics we felt that were strong and that were able to elicit good knowledge sharing, education, and perhaps even inspiration for many people attending the call today. So 6 topics: how to get started with the change, reporting in DAM and other content management systems, governance, and we all love governance, tagging, how to tag people, an issue that all of the panelists, and indeed everyone probably attending today, is being asked those questions, to alt text or not to alt text. And if you're thinking, I don't even know what that means, you're going to learn very soon. And then finally, what do I do when I don't know what to do? And with that, let's get started. All right, panelists, here we go. How do we get started with the change? How do we start?
Is that I think I can get, is that the one I can hop in on?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So hi, everybody. This is Carol again. Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about an ongoing project at Citi, which is where I work, that took direct action on this particular subject. So Nikki Darden, who is our very dynamic head of global marketing integration, she's also our head of DE&I brand strategy and internal brand engagement, saw a need for wider representation in marketing imagery around the globe. She spearheaded an initiative with Citi, partnering with Getty Images and Kantar to create DE&I imagery toolkits to continue walking the walk on diversity, equity, and inclusion, both inside our walls and outside of our walls. As we all know, visuals impact the way we see ourselves and the world around us. So when inclusiveness and diversity are considered in imagery, authentic representation is created that can change perceptions, shift mindsets, and help create lasting connections between brands and consumers. With this project, we've leveraged Getty's proprietary data insights from hundreds of millions of annual downloads and billions of annual searches. Their expertise as the world's leading visual content provider, tapping into the customer perspective with their visual GPS research, plus data and insights from the leading research agency Kantar, rounded out our findings with a deeper understanding of cultural attitudes, behaviors, and stereotypes. The goal is to equip our marketers, or any marketers, as you will hear in a second, and communications with the knowledge and tools and training to drive authentic and multifaceted depictions of people in our creative assets globally. So each toolkit is market specific because diversity looks different in different countries. The team launched a US toolkit in Q4 2021. And there is a link actually to that toolkit in the deck that we're going to distribute after this webinar. And as we've been moving into 2022, we will be rolling out remaining global to other global markets, including the UK. I believe Mexico's already been done, Singapore, India, and other markets worldwide. As part of this work with Getty, we're also creating custom imagery to fill in missing DE&I gaps within Citi's image library. And the imagery created through this initiative considers aspects of visual representation such as race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, disability, body type, and religion. Using our DAM as a one-stop shop for marketers to find imagery and assets, the goal of this is to have accessible, diverse, and inclusive imagery for teams to leverage in their work worldwide, so that the results of a typical search reflect the diversity of our world. To facilitate this, we're leveraging stakeholder feedback, so feedback from any of our marketers worldwide in the various markets, the toolkit research that we do in conjunction with Getty and Kantar, and Getty's search and metadata expertise when it comes to tagging, to tag these images effectively. And yes, tagging will facilitate finding and filtering, but more importantly, it enables us to analyze the keywords and use trends to enable the marketing teams to continue improving DE&I content. So it isn't just about finding, it's about actually analyzing how well we're doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. At Getty Images, our controlled vocabulary system supports all of the visual content on our sites. Because of this, we must have a dynamic and deep vocabulary structure in place to support both the most basic descriptive searches, such as dog or cat, as well as the more nuanced searches for visuals depicting diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are constantly reviewing and modifying our vocabulary to keep it fresh and reflective of current terminology, and balancing that with how our customers are searching and how searches differ across the globe. During a review of the race and ethnicity portion of our vocabulary in 2021, it was identified that the keyword Caucasian ethnicity needed to be changed as it was outdated and rooted in bigotry. Search frequency reports, however, showed that our customers were primarily still using the word Caucasian in their searches. The solution that we arrived at was to change the keyword, the customer-facing keyword, to white people, with supporting synonyms containing Caucasian. And of course, we'll continue to use metadata reporting to assist us in evolving our controlled vocabulary as needs change and evolve.
It's ongoing. It's
ongoing, definitely.
Absolutely. Reem, how did you get started? How is it getting started at where you are?
I'm actually going to brought to you a live case study from our university. How can you get started with a change? So here's my case. In August 2021, the university announced that it would change its name after protest that linked to its namesake 19th century educational reformer Egerton Ryerson, with the design of the residential school system in Canada. Now, this step was based on a 22 recommendation outlined in the Standing Strong Task Force final report, which is one of the recommendations was to rename the post-secondary institution. So they started with a community-based consultation in November 2021. They distributed a survey. That survey was sent to students, staff, alumni to gather their input on a new name for the university. They received more than 30,000 community members' information, and they provide their feedback on what would be the plausible and suitable and inclusive naming for that. And just yesterday, the university announced that the new name of the university is going to be Toronto Metropolitan University. Now, of course, with the name change, there will be a lot of work that is going to be done to update with the name university and the metadata. So every time now you're going to search for Ryerson, there will be some metadata update associated with that that will show that Ryerson University is a former name, and now we are called the TMU, Toronto Metropolitan University.
I love the fact that this is like a real world live example of how change can happen. And for those of you who are returning to us for this webinar, when you mentioned this topic, just a few months ago, Reem, it was, a process of change. And now here we are in April 2022, the change has happened and it was able to be done. There's still a lot of effects that will come from this, but what a lovely testament for those, and hopefully, inspiration for many attending the webinar today, that yes, you can make a change. You can start and actually things can happen. So very, very, very well done. I hope everyone checks out Toronto Metropolitan University, TMU. Well done, well done. All right. So as part of metadata being an influence and a part of DAM and other content management systems, the panelists, when we were talking about this, we were always saying, well, what about the reporting of the content in the DAM and the content management system? So Margret, what have you learned in your work working with DAM and content?
Right, yeah, well, fully leaning into diversity, equity, and inclusion at Getty Images, being the change while also acknowledging the past, the now, and the future has its challenges. Using data and reporting is crucial in my daily life of managing the search metadata for Getty Images, where we need to be on top of identifying when words need to change or be retired or made invisible to our customers but still searchable, understanding how changing words impact search, especially in different global regions, is another benefit of using metadata reporting. Search forecasting reports like Getty Images Visual GPS, which will also be provided as a link to you to access in our support resources, and trend reports such as Google Trends and social media trends assist me in identifying new terminology, as well as uncovering content or freshness gaps in our assets. Search reporting also helps discover biases in visual collections and can help me recognize when we are not supporting through our metadata the different DEI lenses of identity. And the lenses of identity, again, include race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, disability, body types, religion, and are vital to our broad principle of rejecting biased behavior and being inclusive of different voices, perspectives, and experiences at Getty Images.
Yeah, and just to kind of, go along with that, reporting is not something that's always top of mind in DAM, especially when you're first setting up a system, but it really should be when you're thinking about planning out what you're going to do in your system, because it's really critical, especially for this type of work. So in the context of what I'm about to say, I'm using the term tags and keywords interchangeably, though sometimes they can have a different context in different systems. But if I say tag and keyword, I mean the same thing. So DE&I tags empower us to use reporting to improve DEI content. So a good example of that is examining your top keywords against DE&I tags can provide metrics on how we're doing with DE&I representation and how and what content we should add to improve. But a really important part of this is that typical users are more likely to just search generic terms. So it's critical to have DE&I and generic tags. For example, someone looking for family should see a wide array of representations of family based on just typing in that one term. So that's making sure that you have the content that matches these various different lenses, but have the tag that allows people to search it very generally and brings them back those results. People are more than one thing, so robust tagging can really help us reflect the intersectionality in our creative.
Yeah, absolutely. To follow up on this example that you provided, Carol, building from generic and broad category or thematic terms can help to organize the visuals so you know what's already available and what is needed to support your brand message. For example, tagging with a generic word woman, as well as more specifically respectful terminology like transgender woman, will result in the ability to use metadata to report on a wide and narrow scale. Reporting on how many assets of transgender women available in the broader collection of women will assist in uncovering content gaps and potential biases.
I would really highly also agree with both Carol and Margaret. Now, here's another example of concept considering when tagging concept like powerful. So you would then expect to receive an imagery or an asset that result would represent people of disability posing in powerful position for that's an example.
So as we evolve up this discussion, we initiated this panel discussion with ideas on how to get started. One of those ways that we are managing the changes with governance, and governance is an ability of managing change over time. We all believe that governance is good. It's needed. It's not really an option anymore. You really do need it. Reem's example of what's just happened with the naming of Toronto Metropolitan University is a great example of how good governance was able to see some of this happen. So what does governance mean to all of us in the context of metadata and content? And I'll pass it over to Reem to start that conversation.
So if governance is always going to start with the team, who's going to be responsible for managing the asset and the metadata. So here's something that you need to think about: how equity and diversity was intentionally considered when you formally formed that team, how the process of building the team was intentionally inclusive, how DEI has been addressed in your organization and governance model. This would highly affect the way that you manage metadata. Because we have the strong task force, we were able to get into the interaction of naming the school. And we had that model of building or ask the community to collect information about having that new name. It's always going to start with the team. And because TMU now understand the diversity and DEI, and they have a lot of initiative on it. Because of that, we have now implement governance.
Yeah, and just sort of, jumping on that, the what of governance, the context is very important. Tolerance and rules for change are different for marketing than it is versus heritage, let's say, or art, due to the asset life cycle. Knowing the life cycle of your assets, both the use and the relevancy, can help you create the rules of the road for change triggers, timing, and what and how to change. So an example would be terms that are now deemed inappropriate should be removed from tags, as opposed to terms that have deprecated in society for whatever reason, could be relegated as a synonym or put into alternate fields. But you also must consider the resource and the effort to make these changes against the end goal. If your assets really, is archival, historical, then the effort may be completely worth it and a part of the governance of what you do. If it's a marketing asset, well, let's say after 6 months the asset really has lost its not so much relevance but need, then you have to think about, is it worth to go back and change all of those tags or perhaps change synonyms? So context and what the asset, where it lives in the life cycle, is really critical to this governance.
I would love to tackle this with the why, the who and the how, and I think Reem will do the when, but I will definitely say the why, to which we sort of described today already. Business needs change, our users change, our language is definitely changing. So ask yourselves, and to all the people attending this webinar today, is your content out of date? Are your keywords and your metadata out of date? Has the meaning changed over time? Have you looked at some of the things you have in your collection? Has it changed? Is it potentially damaging? It is 2022. Our society has changed. Our political beliefs and systems and cultural norms have changed. It might be damaging. Or is it completely brand new? Is it a new product, a new service, a new concept that wasn't even there 5 years ago? So that's kind of the why. But the who, you need representation from all aspects of the business to participate in this. So do you have the power of a good librarian? We on this panel believe in the power of good librarians to help you in this effort. And if you don't have one, we highly encourage you to go find one, and please feel free to ask us where you can find one, because we know where they are and they're amazing to have a part of your team. Users, get the feedback from your users on a regular basis, weekly, quarterly, however often you want to do it, but make sure you're engaging your users to give you that feedback. Legal, it is important to have a legal representative take a look every once in a while and see how are we doing in terms of the representation of the metadata and the terms that we're using and how that might affect your business practices and some of the legal ramifications of what you're trying to do. And then lastly, I would argue the executive. Let's have senior people within your organization be part of this discussion. It's for everyone. And that's sort of who part of it. It's not just those people who are working, the metaphor of working in the weeds. No, let's talk about everyone from the top down, be a part of this governance. And then finally, before I go to Reem and the when, let's talk about the how. How are we going to do this? Are you adding terms? Are you removing terms in certain situations? How frequently are you reviewing your content? And I would like to challenge everyone on the call today to say, how frequent have you looked at your collection? And it's okay if your answer is, good point, maybe I haven't looked at enough. That's okay. All four of us are here today to say we're with you, we're behind you. It's okay if that's not happening. Maybe additional approval might be needed for some of the things that you might be doing. Again, that speaks to why governance is so powerful. And then the last thing I would like to sort of say is the who part of who's being informed of the changes. If you are adding new terms, if you are removing new terms, if you've made a decision, are you communicating to your users that the change has been made? Literally live in this conversation, Reem has described to us how they have made a change in their organization. Everyone needs to know going forward, this is how it's being called. This is how we refer to it. It used to be known as this, but it's now referred to something else. But I'll let Reem go more into the when aspect of it right now.
That's exactly what's happened. When it was, well, there was a force that it's started because of the staff, the student, the faculty. We all request changes because of the sudden incident that happened when the discovery of the indigenous grave that happened under multiple location. So it's started by our force internally when we start removing the Ryerson University and you use it as action universe. Because of that, the administrative now formed the strong task force community, and they started to do the change. We started in August of 2021, and successfully yesterday we had that to change it. This is the when. But my advice, don't wait to have this kind of unfortunate incident to start the when. Listen to what John just said. Do it frequently.
Take a look. As we said at the beginning of this webinar, language changes. Everything is changing. So let's make sure we're on a very regular basis looking at our content. Okay, we're doing well for time. We have 3 more sections. This next section is something that is very passionate to each of the panelists, if I may say so. And from what we heard from the first time we did this in January, this received a lot of feedback, because I think it's safe to assume many people attending today and many other people in our industries are asking this question: how do I tag people in 2022? This is not a light subject. This is something I think that could take an entire hour to discuss. But as with the time allotted that we have now, Margret, I'm going to pass it over to you. How do we even start this conversation? How do we tag people?
Yeah, it is something that is so important. At Getty Images, we use the who, what, where, when, why question process to help train our eye and train the eye of the people who are adding the keywords or the tags. We find frequently that so much effort is spent on trying to capture every detail of an asset as a tag that the main subject or concept or theme is overlooked. And we find using these questions can help to identify bias in ourselves as keyworders. When answering the who question, I can ask myself if I'm using the most respectful terminology, or am I unintentionally using outdated terminology that can cause harm? Getty Images changing to white people from Caucasian is an example of this. When communicating with our visual content providers, I stress to them the importance of providing metadata that describes the people as they would describe themselves. Model releases are a great source of true personal information provided by the model that can then be captured as keywords or tags. I'm personally very passionate about keywording and search data strategies, but I understand that it's not everyone's cup of tea. Whomever is tagging should understand that a well-keyworded asset will benefit them in the long run. Metadata is vital for discoverability as well as reporting. We use controlled vocabularies at Getty Images, and they're especially important when we're incorporating synonyms or organizing the keywording process. You can also build relationships between words within a controlled vocabulary structure, which means you can apply fewer tags and still have a very robust search experience. But of course, you can achieve this without a database of controlled terms by being diligent and consistent in adding broad and specific tags to assets.
I can jump to that too, and I'm going to add to what Margaret said. Now, DEI is a framework of creating an environment that it is fair and welcoming to all individual and merit basis, and this is the goal. We all unknowingly make decision and judgment based on biases instilled in us from television, media, family, friends, or more. It's only when we become aware of and reflect on our biases that we can identify and remove systemic barriers from our institution and system to truly become inclusive. So I'm going to give you an advice from the academic background. We all have to start. Here's what you can do about your biases. You have to increase your awareness of biases and how that is going to influence your decision, your keywording method or tagging. You have to use proven strategies to remove biases. You have to learn ways to be inclusive of others, like becoming familiar with anti-racism, anti-oppression principle, develop a greater cultural understanding of other. And you also need to apply the DI lens when developing and reviewing policy or selecting updated data, which is connected to what Margaret just said.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah, exactly. In tagging, you can use the DEI training and education to identify the benefits of broad terms, themes, categories, concepts that help to define your brand's message. Don't shy away from broad terms like diversity or culture or authenticity, as they can be useful in setting the bar for your brand's visuals, and they can be used to tag large sets of assets, such as the example I mentioned earlier, a woman and transgender woman. Starting to group assets by broad terms, such as diversity or culture, can open the door to more specific tags. And again, the structure of using broad and specific tagging will support reporting and identifying content gaps, and it'll help to ensure that you're tagging with the most relevant and respectful terminology. It also helps to define what diversity means to your brand. Who is your audience? When tagging, if you don't have access to the creator of the visual content to confirm how the model self-identified, do you happen to have access to the person who sourced the visuals for your company? What tags or keywords did they use to find the images? Can you use those to then tag within your digital asset management system? If you don't have confirmed ethnicity or gender terms, can you access metadata from headlines, captions, or alt text fields to determine when the image was shot, to provide regional information, or where the image was shot, to provide regional information to ensure you're diversifying by location? You can use visual identifiers to assign valuable tags around culture, socioeconomic status, or religion. If you don't have access to the confirmed ethnicity, consider adding skin tone. What diversity means to your brand, using respectful, whatever diversity means to your brand, use respectful, accurate, inclusive, and current keywords, because they really do matter.
Mm-hmm. And Reem, you had mentioned the word bias, and Margret, you had mentioned the word bias. So this is a term we're seeing a lot of. So when we ask ourselves the question, how do we tag people? Many of us, and some of us might be thinking about artificial intelligence options. You know, it was once a very science fiction-y thing to think about, but it is happening. But there is inherent bias in the artificial intelligence engines. Two things that are part of our reference collection is the documentary Coded Bias, and one of them is the book Invisible Women. So we do need to think about that. If our programming is being done by white cisgender males, that will influence on how the artificial engines and the algorithms are working. So we do need to be conscious of the bias. And if that is something, this is new for you today, there is bias training that you can take. Highly encourage that for yourself, your team, maybe your larger teams at hand, to start thinking carefully about that. So this is a very important topic, and I think we could go on for at least another hour on this topic, but in a matter of time, the question is, to alt text or not to alt text, and how? What does that mean, Reem?
Okay, so alt text is actually referred to alternative text, which is a short description of the visual, whether it's an image, graphic, or chart, or anything, in a way that it's going to make sense for people or users who are unable to see them. It's really important because it's improve accessibility and provide equal experience for those who are either blind or even have a vision issue. Now, if some of you already know about this, in October 2021, IBTC has updated their photo metadata standard to include the alt text and extended description field as part of their standard, which would help website and electronic publishing to be more accessible. In the same event, if some of you attended that, they brought a guest speaker who is legally blind and showed a live demo of his screen reader device. He demonstrated two examples: a good website that implement an alt text for all images, and a bad website that doesn't. You can even try it to yourself how frustrated it would be when you just close your eyes and someone would try to describe the images on a website by just saying image 1, image 2, image, image, image. Now, in the matter of how, and very just a quick tips on how to write a really good alt text. So make sure it describes the purpose of the visual by trying to describe the big obvious thing in the image, like start with the setting, for example, and then dig into the details, like what would be the emotion on the people faces, or what would be the colors. Try to use like a short and a simple word, and avoid using the word image. Don't use that. Now, if you have an infographic or a chart, so make sure that you can describe the object or the purpose of the chart. Now, alt text can be really useful also with video asset to describe the visual experience. Just one cautious that sometimes alt text is not useful, and especially if there is like a decorative images like dividers or design elements. So you don't want to waste your time just describing those decorative, because it's not providing any meaningful content. So you're not required to add this. So that's just a quick overview of alt text.
And with that, the final topic before we go to a rigorous Q&A with all our attendees is, and I love the way this sounds, what do I do when I don't know what to do? What is that?
What do I do? And it's funny, I sort of picked this one up because I'm in the middle of adding a lot of content to our dance. So after these D&I webinars that we've been doing, and then also the project that we have at City, I find myself with my headphones on, going through hundreds upon sometimes thousands of images and tagging away. And I found myself hitting some things where I was like, I don't know what to do here. And really the places where I hit, I don't know what to do here, were things like, and actually I'm very happy to say both Reem, all three of the panelists here, Reem and Margaret and John, in everything they've said before this, have actually given some really good things about what to do, and have offline as well. But things like, you know, I want to be able to tag an ethnicity, but I can't tell what the ethnicity is just really easily visually, especially when it comes into, you know, gender tags and, you know, sexual orientation tags and all that. It isn't something you can necessarily always see in a picture. So, you know, my question really, I kind of posed it to them when I was going through this stuff. I was like, what do I do if I can't quite tell what this is? So, many of the suggestions that we actually had is, and Margaret actually made a really good point of it, was if you had the ability to refer back to the original content creator, see if you can go back to that. See if you can, if the model release, if they were awesome enough to actually put some of that model metadata in the picture, kind of unlikely. But if you have the ability to go back to, say, Getty and say, hey, the person who created this content, do you have more information on this model? Because the model releases do tend to have a lot more information. So that was a really, really good suggestion they had. Also, do you have access to the brief that was given to the content creators so that you can see what the intention was of that photo? So perhaps the brief was that you wanted to show a family with two women, and it was very specific that, this is the LGBTQ, content, this is what we're doing it for, as opposed to just a picture of two women. So the intention, trying to find that intention from the original brief, also a really good place to go. And then, when it came to tagging about stuff that is, let's say it's not necessarily DE&I specific, but could be, as I was going through, I actually used the stock sites as a good place to research. So with the example that Margaret came up with, I too got a little flummoxed with, what do I do about white people? Because one of the other things that comes up that you will notice, that I would say everyone here should be aware of, is especially with some of your older content, I would say maybe not stuff that's within the last year or so, you will notice that every other ethnicity will be tagged except for white. White is almost the default, which means that you're kind of otherizing everybody else, which is not helping the course of what we're trying to do. So, trying to figure out, okay, do I say white people? Do I say white ethnicity? Do I, what term do I use? And I literally just decided I went to Getty, I went to Shutterstock, went to a couple different places and just looked up. I decided to look up blonde women because I figured that was safe. I'll look up blonde women and see what tags they have underneath there. And that can be a really, really good resource to go to, is see what the people who have people like Margaret, who this is their bread and butter, are real experts and know how to do this. They're doing it far more robustly than I'm sure at an organizational level you can. So that's also a really good resource. But another thing that has been suggested is perhaps purchase a taxonomy. If you have the capability of being able to do that, there are many taxonomies that are sort of out there to give you a really good place to start. And you can purchase a taxonomy if you are working in a field that has some very specific wording, healthcare, etc. You can buy those kinds of taxonomies so that you kind of don't have to guess, you've got a place to start from. So that's kind of what I would say is, look into your resources, look into the origination of your content, and don't be afraid to go ask for help. I was emailing these guys right after I was going through that stuff and saying, what do I do? So.
Ask for help. And Carol, I think you might have created a new word, and I love the word otherizing. Let's not otherize things. It's easy to default to other. And I encourage everyone on the webinar today, do not use other. If you can identify, like Margaret said, go back to the source of creation. If you know more information, use that information. It will help everybody out. Let's not otherize, as Carol has.
Other and miscellaneous is the other word, John. You said
miscellaneous, no miscellaneous. We can be better than miscellaneous in 2022. Time is of the essence. We want to make sure we get some Q&A in here. So just to close off, just a closing slide, and we love inspiration, right? So the quote is from Angela Duckworth: language is one way to cultivate hope. People can learn to learn. We, the panelists on this webinar today, we do believe that people can learn to learn. We've seen examples of it today, that things can change. People can learn. So it's as an inspiration for everyone attending today, or if you're listening at a different date, you can change, things can change, but raise your hand, ask for help. And in that spirit, we do have 2 pages here of, oopsie daisies. We have 2 pages here of references that we've given. Now, these can be we can add to these as we go forward because we do have more to say. But in the interest of time, I'm getting pinged on this. Yes, we do get to the Q&A. First, before we get to the Q&A, before I will hand that over to our moderator, I'm going to stop sharing so we can all see each other. First and foremost, Reem, Carol, Margaret, thank you for sharing your thought leadership on this topic. The reason we're doing this for the second time is because we received a voluminous amount of gratitude and applause and thank yous for what we were able to achieve. And this discussion is not over. It continues on. We're going to be doing this live at a conference in September. This continues on, and this is the beginning. And for those of you attending for the first time going, but I need to know more, this is the start. Those references will help out. But let's go to Q&A so we can try and get a few questions in. I'll pass it over to the moderator. Andrew, do we have questions?
We've got two. So the first one is, do you have an opinion on managing DEI keywords when you may be distributing content and may not have a structure as robust as Getty's? Excuse me.
No, it's the greatest of word.
I think that I would maybe, going back to kind of tagging broad, if you don't have a hierarchy structure that you can pull from, start broad, and then, see where you need to get more narrow, but always, using a respectful terminology, using the most current terminology that you can. But as Carol mentioned, if you're stuck, if you're looking at a picture and you're like, I can't tell, what can you tell? What about it are you confident with? And I would start there.
And I would say that I started, I went around and polled and asked for like, does anybody have some whiz bang way I can track this? And everyone's like Excel spreadsheets. So what I did is I started filling in a spreadsheet with the words that I used, and actually starting to do that helped me narrow everything down and keep it within a more of a controlled vocabulary kind of way of managing it. And then I kind of kept a column for potential synonyms, but it's for me that if we get to a point where I can manage synonyms, then I know what can happen there. It's not actually in our DAM just yet. But I found that actually really helped to know that synonyms exist for me to put them somewhere. And then keep in top of mind that like, okay, when we get to a point where we can handle that, how do we want to handle that? Because also the synonyms have a context. So that's kind of, the lo-fi way I went about dealing with
Lo-fi works.
Lo-fi works, definitely.
Andrew, do you have time for one more?
We've got one more. Is it okay to ask for specific DEI identifiers in a talent release?
Ooh,
good question.
Very good question. Whoever, anonymous, you did it. That's a well done. Is it okay to ask for specific DEI identifiers in a talent release?
Why not?
Yeah, I think you can ask. You can't expect an answer, but you can definitely ask, and you can, especially if you're asking respectfully. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think as we have seen over time, even like photo shoots, they don't put locations, like tell me it was Hawaii, but then tell me more about the actual photo shoot. Who was there? What are their names? Like Margaret said a little while ago, go right back to the origin, creator of source, like tell us more. And if they do provide that information, all the better for all of us. Name, expression of gender identity, all those things. If you don't, they may not receive it, but if they do, all the better for us. Great.
I don't think it's illegal to do. I think if it's optional.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's an option, and I think it's a must.
It's a must, but
it's an optional answer. It's an optional answer.
Exactly. I think this person's question is probably pushing to like, can I legally make somebody do that? Yes. Which I think probably not.
Right.
And I think the answer has to be.
Yeah. And, tell them why you're asking, tell them why you're wanting the information, to encourage them. So they understand, they feel safe to give you the answer to start with, but also so they know how you're going to use the information that they're providing.
Excellent. I have been given the notice that the time is up. So for those who are attending today, you will receive an email with the recording and the transcription for this. And I do want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy morning, afternoons, nights, evenings, wherever you are, to attend this. And again, Reem, Carol, Margaret, Thank you for
Thank you,
sharing
John.
No, thank
Thank
you.
you.
on
Thanks for
metadata
asking us
diversity
again.
and inclusion. And to everyone, have a great day. Be well, be safe, be happy, and more from us as we go. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.